Hey guys, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how is the development pattern going with AMP components, okay? So here I have the AMP carousel, which is something you'll probably use in every site because everybody loves carousels or sliders or whatever. And if you were making a ordinary HTML website, what you would do is you would Google Flexbox carousel or Flex slider or slider jQuery slider, jQuery plugin. You would land on a page, you would copy the code, you have to download JavaScript, CSS, and some images because some sliders and a lot of jQuery libraries are very old and still use images as icons, which is stupid, but whatever. And then you would try to embed it, and then there will be some minor bugs like you misplaced the file, you didn't load the CSS, course wasn't allowed. So the whole thing will last for probably about an hour. And if you are used to the component jQuery library using, it will be less time. But then as you develop further as a developer and you find out that all websites should be accessible because that's fundamental right for everybody to be allowed to browse the web accessibly, then you will go back to your jQuery plugin for the slider and you see that it's completely inaccessible, and then you have to spend hours trying to find a new one. And I'm just painting you a picture how it is to develop with normal development tools, if with quotation marks. So with AMP, this is so much easier. Now, what happens when you want to add a component in AMP? So first, you find out if AMP has a component for what you're looking for. For example, if the client says, I want a YouTube video featuring many puppies. So your first thought is, I can't do that because AMP doesn't support iframes. But then you think about it and you go into amp.dev, and then you find, oh, okay, AMP has the YouTube component. Then you read the documentation and then you continue working. So let me give you a more hands-on example. So here we have a carousel, okay? And the client requested that whenever users click on the image of the carousel, he wants the image zoomed in and in the lightbox, okay? So very quickly you're thinking, okay, so for the slider I'm going to need AMP carousel, and for the zoom in effect I'm going to need a lightbox. And since the client wants the images to be zoomed in a carousel, I'm going to need the AMP lightbox, excuse me. And so what you're going to do next is you're going to go to the amp.dev site, and then you're going to open the AMP carousel page and documentation. Now there are two types of documentations in AMP. Either the playground, the AMP by example, formerly known as AMP by example, which is now hooked together. In AMP by example, amp.dev documentation, I know it's confusing. They have like a lot of examples you can look through, and I think that's really cool. And or you can have like normal documentation, which is something like this, and it usually have a link to AMP by example, which you click on, and then you go there. Okay, so let's go. But either if you go to AMP by example or the normal documentation, you still have the link. So you go to the documentation, you copy the link, you read through the basic usage, because I'm gonna teach you some of the components, the most used components, but I won't be able to teach you all the components. Besides, they change all the time without noticing people, which I don't like, but I'm not in charge of AMP. And so you copy the script, you go to your head, and then you paste it. Okay, this is very important because if you're trying to use an AMP component and you don't have the script in the head, your component is just not going to work, but you're not going to get an error. And I know that's super annoying, but AMP hasn't done anything about it, so that's life. Okay, and then you paste it, and afterwards you go to the documentation again, and then you're trying to figure out what is supported, what kind of attributes are mandatory. You see here we see that the carousel supports autoplay, and then you start developing slowly to make it happen. See, this is the AMP Lightbox Gallery, which is another component we need for the requirements. And here they say supported layouts. Now, supported layouts is whether or not they support the layout attribute or what kind of values they support. For example, AMP Lightbox Gallery only supports the no display, so they're not going to support the responsive or fill or anything by that. And over here, it says usage. So you're going to have to read it through, and then you have examples where if you click on it, this is AMP by example, and you know, they show you a lot of examples, which is good. And then you can also open it in Playground, which is something that I really like, and then you can edit the code over here on the left to be shown on the right, and that's something really cool. So that's basically it. It's much easier than using jQuery libraries like we're so used to. And AMP has a whole team dedicated to accessibility in their components. And the components written for AMP are usually done by Google engineers, if I'm not mistaken. And these guys are amazing, okay? They're the top of the line. They're very good programmers. So if I'm presented with the choice of either me to code the slider or to ask a Google engineer to code a slider, you bet I'm gonna ask the Google engineer to do it. And so that's it. So if you don't need any component, you just continue programming or developing with normal HTML, and then Google now supports JavaScript. Okay, now if you can avoid it, use the AMP components. If you need something custom, use AMP bind, and then as the last resort, use JavaScript in AMP, because it's very limited, and it's good practice not to write custom JavaScript if you can avoid it, because like I said, those components are amazing, so just use them.